The first thing you want to do is to wipe everything down with a thinner, either acetone or lacquer thinner. You want to start wiping it all down every inch, go over the whole thing. If you don't do this, you're going to have a possible little residue of mold release which will cause our paint not to stick well. So wipe down all the parts, the fins. Each of the individual fins will need to be wiped down. Get all the mold release off. We'll go over the whole head. Okay, at this point we've got the fish all wiped down. And the next thing that we need to do is we're going to have to cut out the throat area on this so the head can set on here. You'll notice that the throat extends out in between the gill plates, and it's got to fit into the fish. So I'll set it down there and take a look at it and inspect and see how much of this needs to be cut out. And it looks like about that amount to allow that head to fit on there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out with my saber saw. Now that I've removed the throat area, I'm going to test fit my head. Now it's important before you test the heads that you heat them up. It'll cause the material to become flexible, and you won't take a chance on cracking the head by just trying to force it on. As you can see, it's not going to sit all the way on perfect at this point. So just going to grab my heat gun. Once I've got it on there in its heated stage, I'll just hold it for a few minutes and let it cool down so it's going to stay that way. Okay, now that my head is cooled and it's going to stay where I want it, I'm going to work the inside areas of the head to make sure that they're all smooth and a consistent thickness all the way around. I'm going to use a Dremel tool with a sanding drum to work the inside areas of the head. Well, I've got all the high spots taken down on the head now, and what I'm going to do is just go inside with some 100 grit sandpaper, and then to finish it off some 220 grit sandpaper. And I've pre-painted the gills. The procedure that I took was I first primered this area, and I intentionally tried to keep the primer away from the fin socket area and the head attachment area. And then I went ahead and took gill red and painted my gills. Okay, we have 2 sets of fins that need to be physically installed. The rest of them are always molded onto the fish. We've got the pectoral fins, which are the front fins of the fish, and we've got the pelvic fins. You can see the difference in shape. Generally on most fish, the pectoral fins are the bigger of the two. We've got a socket on the blank, and you can see that there's actually 2 different sides on the fin. One side's got is built up higher than the other. That would be like the muscle of the fish or of the fin, and generally that will fit into the fin socket. So I'm going to go ahead and decide how I want my fin angled. And if it's not making perfect contact with the blank, sometimes we'll have to do a little bit of adjustment on the base of the fin. And what I do is I'll take the Dremel tool and just flatten off an area. I've made a flat spot, so this is going to sit exactly the way I want it. This is the position that I'm looking for. Then I want my pelvic fin to kind of match up with the similar angle. And it's really important that you study fish and study reference material. I can't tell you every single little difference in the way you would position the fins, so it's something that you're going to have to do a little study on your own as you get better at creating these, make them look more lifelike. The next thing I'm going to do is to drill holes in the fin sockets and in the fins. And the reason I do that is I'm going to be setting these with Bondo, and that gives it something a little extra to grab onto. Okay, I've got all my holes drilled in my fish body at this point, and I'm going to go ahead on the fin butts of my fins and drill them out. Start out slowly, and you can see, since the fins are clear, you can see where your drill bit's going, and you only want to go in maybe 1/4 of an inch. Just needs to be enough for the Bondo to grab onto. At this point, we're going to go ahead and detail all of the edges of the fins to give it a little more natural look. I'm going to use a Dremel tool with a cutting wheel to do that. Just set your Dremel tool at a low RPM. I'm just going to go with the natural detail that I can see on the edge of the fin. You don't want to cut in too far, but just enough to give it a little. All the fins are completed on the body. And then I'll do the same thing on all of my separate fins, the pectorals and the pelvic fins. Okay, at this point my Bondo has set, so the fin is in place, but it's still in a rubbery state, which is where I want it to be able to trim it back a little bit. So I've set both of my pectoral fins, they're solid, and I've trimmed them, and now I'm going to set my pelvic fins, which I generally do both of them at the same time so that I can get the same angle on them. So I'll set them in place, kind of work them around in the Bondo a little bit to make sure I got a good bond. Set the angle and hold it till it cures. Okay, now that the fins are all set and I've got them all trimmed, I'm going to mix up some Magic Sculpt and I'm going to refine the fin butts. Well, I've gone ahead and primered the fish. A couple things to warn you about when you do the primering. First of all, use a lacquer gray primer so that it's compatible with the paints that we're using. They're all, actually I'm using lacquers, so that's what's compatible with mine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray silver coat over the whole fish as a base coat. Nice even coat of silver. Okay, we're getting ready to put the spots on. I'm using jet black for the spots. Okay, at this point I'm adjusting the spray on my airbrush to get a consistent thickness of spot. Usually they're a little more concentrated on the back of the fish than they are on the side of the fish. Then we're going to spot the dorsal fin. I'll usually set it at an angle that generally the spots on the dorsal fin will be slightly elongated, so I'll want to spray at a little bit of an angle with the direction of the rays. There's 3 types of clear coat that I use. The gloss top coat leaves a little more of a matte finish. The liquid crystal gives you a nice wet look. You can get any degree of wet look that you want. And then you've got the polyurethane top coat that requires a mixture that's a little more difficult to use. So this client selected kind of just a medium gloss on it, so we're going to go with the regular gloss top coat.